Okay, hi everybody, it's Maria. I'm here. I brushed my hair, I pulled it back. I'm waiting for Tom Bilyeu, who's going to join us today. And I've been following Tom for quite some time now. My son Patrick introduced him to me, and I've been really inspired by so many of the things that he's been putting up, especially for young entrepreneurs, but really about relationships, about how to stay focused, how to stay energized, how to stay in the game. And I thought he would be a really not only fun person to talk to, but I thought he'd be inspiring. These conversations that we're doing here, I'm calling them at home, but they're really with the people that I'm calling the helpers, the healers, and the cultivators of hope, because I really do believe that that's what we all are. We're all helpers, we're all healers, and we're all cultivators of hope. So I hope that all of you will begin to think of yourselves in that respect, as helpers, as healers, and cultivators of hope. So once again, I'm kind of here on my own, trying to figure out exactly how to Instagram Live myself, which is not something I'm normally used to doing. So I'm looking for Tom, and I haven't found him yet, but he's going to come up in here in a minute, I think. But I thought in the meantime, every day I want to leave you with something or bring you something. And I was reading Leonard Cohen today. This is a book I have that's on my desk. It's called just Leonard Cohen. And he has a poem in here called Our Lady of Solitude. And I thought I would... Oh, there's Jeff Brown. I love Jeff Brown's Soul Shaping, Cultivators of Hope and Connection. He added the word cultivators of hope and connection. You're right about that. So we have healers, helpers, cultivators of hope and connection. That's what this community is. And I'm so glad that it's grown. Helpers, healers, motivators of hope. Okay, everybody's going to town on all of these words, which is great because... we need to be cultivators of hope. We need to be motivators of hope. We need to be connectors at times like this. And we're all capable, as I said, of being all of those things, which is what I'm particularly excited about. So, Tom, and maybe Tom is, let me look at these little things here. I wanted to read you Leonard Cohen in the meantime, but nope, Tom's not there. So I hope many of you know who Leonard Cohen is. I hope you like Leonard Cohen. And if I find Tom when I'm halfway through Our Lady of Solitude, I'll stop and get him. Our Lady of Solitude. All summer long she touched me. She gathered in my soul from many a thorn, from many a thicket, her fingers like a weaver's, quick and cool. And the light came from her body, and the night went through her grace. All summer long she touched me, and I knew her face to face. And her dress was blue and silver, and her words were few and small. She is the vessel of the whole wide world, mistress, oh mistress of us all. Dear Lady, Queen of Solitude, I thank you with my heart for keeping me so close to thee, while so many, oh so many, stood apart. So, I know many of us are standing apart, and I have found that in moments like this, when we have to social distance, stand apart, we can also connect. We can also motivate. We can also help and heal. I was sitting this morning writing my Sunday paper column and saying that in these moments that I have learned that I need to reach out. I need to have a routine. I need to care for myself, but that I also find inspiration in being useful and trying to help others. So that's kind of what I do is I reach out. I try to find somebody that I haven't talked to in a little bit, and I reach out and try to get in touch with them, check in on them, particularly people who live alone. I noticed that yesterday a lot of people were commenting that they are alone, they live alone, or they feel alone. And that's something I think we've all felt at different times in our lives, lonely and or alone. And you can feel that in a relationship. You can feel it in a whole house full of people, or you can feel it when you're alone. But from those that I have spoken to who have felt that way and have guided me out of that feeling on many a time, they say that to acknowledge the feeling, to reach out to someone, there's always going to be someone, I think, that will pick up here. Here, Tom is requesting a video, so we're going to try to find Tom. And there he is. There's Tom. I hope that's Tom. You who don't know Tom. Tom, are you there? You are. Hi, Tom.
I am. How's it going?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing very well, thank you. I'm excited to be on here with you.
Oh, I'm really super excited to be talking to you. I was telling the audience here who is in this community about you, about how I got introduced to you through my son Patrick, and why I wanted to talk to you, because these conversations we've been doing, Tom, are with the people that I'm calling the helpers, the healers, the cultivators of hope. And I shared with my audience the 7 steps to self-care that you posted yesterday that I thought would be a great place to start, if you're cool with that.
Yeah, of course. Absolutely.
I'm probably old enough to be your mother, but nonetheless, I'm really inspired by what you've been putting out there. And I think one of the great things of this moment is that all of these generations are bridging together and we're learning from each other. Hopefully your age is learning from my age and vice versa. Which
For
is
sure.
the beauty of this moment. But I want to pick up on Tom posted, and I put them up in my story, 7 steps to self-care. And the first one is about framing your self-narrative. Can you talk about that a little bit, Tom, and why that's so important?
Yeah, definitely. So your life is really going to be determined by how you view yourself. And
Right.
This is one of those things, man, so much of mindset really cheesy, but in truth, it is extraordinarily powerful. And the way that you talk to yourself about yourself is one of the most critical things in terms of determining your neurological state. So the actual neurochemistry that you have flowing through your body, telling you to feel good, bad, indifferent, scared, whatever the case may be, it really comes from the story that's playing in your head. So the same is true about the coronavirus, the same is true about yourself. If you're loving yourself and giving yourself the grace and the space to get better, and you're looking for the things in your life that you've done well, the times that you really showed up to remind you that you can show up again, then it gets really powerful. And so there's a concept from a guy named Nassim Taleb. He wrote a book called Anti-Fragile. And in my own life, I struggled very profoundly with the story that I was telling myself about myself. And have you seen the movie Amadeus?
Yes, but can you just repeat the name of that book? Because people like to write these things down. Anti-Fragile.
Most definitely. Anti-Fragile by Nassim Taleb.
Okay.
And it is an extraordinary book. And he defines Anti-Fragile as being it's different than being robust or being strong. So things that are robust or strong, they're still defined by their breaking point. It's just that their breaking point is quite far away. So it can take keep a licking and keep on, or takes a licking and keeps on ticking, as the old phrase went. Mm-hmm. And he said, but we don't have any concept for something that actually gets better the more that it's assaulted. And the example that he gives and is very, very powerful is the immune system. So the human immune system needs to be under attack in order to grow stronger. And so when you're born, the reason that kids get sick so much is their immune system hasn't encountered enough of these challenges yet to have the repertoire of bugs that it knows how to fight off. And so actually, the more you get sick, the less likely you are to get sick in the future. Senescence being a different story, but in your prime, that really is true. So the more assaulted that it gets, the better off it is. Peanut allergies are in large part due to people being more and more cautious about exposure to peanuts when they're pregnant, when the kid's young. And so because of that, people can develop crushing allergies to a lot of different things. So that gave birth to this concept of being anti-fragile. So I was asking myself, okay, what is an anti-fragile self-narrative? Like, what could I tell myself about myself that would make me better the more somebody came after me, making fun of me or trying to tear me down, or that I was even saying negative things about myself? Like, what is the one thing that would be empowering? And the only anti-fragile personality that I've been able to identify is that of the learner. So if you have the identity, like your very self-esteem is built around being a learner, not about being something or knowing something or being good or right or worthy, just you value yourself for the willingness to learn. Then if somebody comes after you and says, oh, you're stupid, you haven't succeeded, whatever the attack is, then you're like, that's amazing, because now you've eliminated a blind spot. And if it's true, all I have to do is go and address that blind spot, because I know that I can get better at anything at any time. And that literally, that small switch in my mind from trying to think of myself as smart to thinking of myself as the learner changed my entire life.
That's so interesting, because on the bottom of your self-care thing, you talk about get obsessively better at something all the time. That was one of the kind of points that you had yesterday. So what are you trying to, in this time when you're at home, when you're self-quarantined, what are you trying to get obsessively better at, or what can people get obsessively better at?
Well, so I'll answer. I'm trying to get obsessively better about right now is leveraging social media to connect. So I really think, so my sister is somebody who reacts very negatively to social isolation. I could probably do a lot of it and be just fine. But my sister really needs people. And so it makes me super aware of the potential dangers beyond the economics, beyond even the health risk of COVID-19. Just the realities of what prolonged isolation will do for some people. So, you know, a big tool in my business is social media, but I have a team. And so I've often relied on them to be the nuts and bolts of this. But now that I'm here and my team is working remotely, I thought, you know what, it's time to buckle down and really figure this thing out and get in here. So I'm doing daily lives, much like you, and just getting better at the tool to find ways to really help people connect, even if it's only virtually. What people can get good at themselves is, of course, anything that they find interesting. And the part that I find is difficult for people is they don't desire. And that crisis of clarity around desire is probably where most people should start trying to figure things out. So what I always tell people is there's nothing magical about passion. So people want passion to feel like love. They want it to be this magical moment and this thing that just happens with no effort and no work. And for some people, it happens when they're so young that they don't realize that it really was a process, right? Your parents introduced you to ice skating or whatever it was, and you liked it. And you forget about the 10 other things that they introduced you to that you didn't like. And you like something, and so you start doing it. And so this is the process of desire, basically, because to decide what that thing is that you're going to go pursue, it needs to be based on like a real spark of interest. So go play, explore. And when you find something that you respond to, now you want to build desire in that thing. And the way that you build desire is basically a neurological process. So you're going to say, okay, this is something that gives me more energy than it takes, and I'm going to engage with it. So you're not going to think your way to this. So what I tell people is passion it's not an archaeological dig, it's an architectural build. So
okay,
you're not...
wait, pause a second, repeat that. Passion is not an archaeological dig. It
is an architectural build.
Okay, that's a good line. Okay, what do you mean by that?
So people think that they're going to turn inward and find their deep passion that's been hiding there all along. People even use the words, find your passion.
Right.
But if we switched one word and we said, build your passion, then it would be completely different. So people now have this incredible opportunity. You get to be at home a lot more than you otherwise would have.
Right.
And if you take that time to build a passion, then all of a sudden, whatever it is you're going to learn is going to be born out of that. So you found that thing, you had an initial spark of interest, which I'll define simply as it gives you more energy than it takes away from you.
Right.
Then you're going to engage with it, because you're not going to be able to think your way to success. You need to go really do it and see if it's going to be an interest or if it's going to be a passion. And by engaging, if you grow more fascinated, not less, then it's got a chance. The element of passion becomes a little bit different, which is, to me, passion is kind of like love. When it's unrequited, it's very different than if it's a two-way street. So how does a passion become a two-way street? It lets you serve not only yourself, but other people. So when somebody has a real passion for something, let's take music. When you have a real passion for music, usually that manifests as, I'm going to work really, really hard to gain this skill on this instrument or whatever. And I love it. I love it so much. I like practicing. But the reason that this becomes a real passion is this set of skills allows me to communicate to people on an emotional level, to move them, to take them on this emotional journey. And that feedback loop of seeing people be moved by the music that I'm creating that makes me want to work harder to get even better so I can communicate more clearly. And so architecture is another one, right? You learn how to build something and you can actually build a shelter for another human being, or you can build, you know, a gigantic office building or a bridge. I mean, like literally the metaphor of a bridge, like you can actually build a bridge that literally brings people together.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, these things that you like the process, but it's giving you something that allows you to also serve other people. So that's like when you see that, where the harder I work, the more I'm able to connect or move or serve or whatever, and you get that feedback loop, that's when people then go on to do truly extraordinary things.
So, Tom, you know, a lot of people are struggling right now. I don't need to tell you that. And they're saying, okay, I just lost my job, which was my passion. I just lost what I like to get up every day and go and do. I can't meet my bills. I just started a small business. As a friend of mine said to me yesterday, this is every entrepreneur's nightmare. I know you've been trying to do some videos about how people can stay calm, how they can shift their mindset. What's your best advice to small business owners in particular who've been hit so hard by this? Is this a storm they can weather? And if so, how do you weather it?
Yeah, so yes, it's a storm that you can weather. And now let's get really tactical. Yeah. So a big part of the problem for me with the entrepreneurial space is it's often advice given by people that haven't run a business. So the hard reality of business is you actually have to be business savvy. So there are parts of business that if you find that you're on really shaky ground, step number one, do not look at the whole problem. Don't try to see this as, you know, my business is collapsing and COVID-19 has totally changed the face of society and how am I ever going to get out from under this? Okay, that's a recipe for disaster.
That's a bad narrative. That's a bad narrative.
100%. Very well said.
Okay.
So now you need to break the problem down into pieces. So what is actually happening? Oh, I have a yoga studio. People are not coming into my studio. Okay, now we have a problem that's manageable. So people aren't coming into your studio, and they're coming into your studio for a very specific reason. In this case, it's COVID-19, people are being told to stay home. Okay, well now you're a yoga instructor at a time where people have very limited space and they need to move. Like this is actually a huge opportunity for the yoga instructor that understands yoga is about connection, which for sure is going to be one of the big things here, but it's largely connection to your own body and to the way that you move, and in a way that doesn't usually require a lot of space. So for a yoga instructor who can get online, and that goes to the savvy part, you have to figure it out. Like no one is going to come and rescue you. You have to figure out how to do that. And
right.
It's not going to be easy. And the number of people that will go out of business because they did not allow themselves to believe in the only anti-fragile self narrative that they can learn will be astonishing. And that's the real heartbreak. Because if you said, I don't know how to do that yet, but I'm going to figure it out because I am the learner, then you shift into action, which action cures everything. So it's like, okay, cool. I know what my problem is. People aren't coming into my yoga studio. I know how to get them online. I don't know how to get online. So now I know what to learn. And where I go with people is clarity is so important because you have to know what skill you're lacking. And if all you tell me is, hey, Tom, I want to win a gold medal, people think that that's actually really concrete. And then I say, in what? The Olympics? Yes, the Olympics. Fantastic. Winter or summer? Summer. Wonderful. Swimming or tennis? Swimming. Great. Breaststroke, backstroke, freestyle medley. Like, what are we doing? Because you have to get to the point where you know when you go into the gym, what weights do I need to lift? What muscles do I need to get strong? And the same is true of business. You need this terrifying degree of clarity so you know exactly what skills you're lacking. You know whether you're going to go get those skills or you're going to go get a partner. But someone in the business, in this yoga analogy, in the example, someone in the business has to understand how to very rapidly get you up so that you can film. Now, the good news is the vast majority of the technology is already solved for. and do it on a phone. It is deadly simple.
Okay, so I just want to pause there a second, because you just kind of brought a lot of the points you've been talking about this whole conversation together. You brought up the narrative, changing the narrative. I don't know something yet, adding the word yet. Seeing yourself as a learner, right? So that means you can learn what you don't know yet, right? Taking whatever it is and looking at it as a temporary issue that you can build around, right? So you may have the yoga studio, but you can figure out how to try to get it online. That you have to be resourceful, which comes back to the learner, correct? And the narrative, and figure out how to get yourself up online, because no one's coming to rescue you. And then get up there. Now people would say, okay, but that's not going to pay my bills.
Yeah. So this is where things get really tough, and people have got to understand that being an entrepreneur is about putting yourself out there for the market. Now, the reason that I found being an entrepreneur one of the greatest things that I've ever done in my life was my house was on the line. And Mark Laurie, who is a very successful serial entrepreneur that sold multiple companies for over $1 billion. His most recent company was Jet.com, which was acquired by Walmart. He has a concept he calls billions or body bags. Because I was asking him, like, dude, how
are body bags?
Billions or body bags. And this now we're getting into, I like war language, I like aggression,
so this
like
is
all
new
of that
to
stuff
me.
really serves.
Okay, maybe I'll have to do another analogy, but okay.
So you'll sometimes hear a similar idea referred to as burn the ships at the shore. So there's a very famous battle. I think it was, if not the Battle of Troy, it was around that time in the Mediterranean, where they came to take this island and they knew that they were vastly outnumbered. And so the general said, burn the ships at the shore, so that the only way to get home is through victory. And when you become an entrepreneur, man, that's the game, because the glory of being an entrepreneur is that it's risk and reward. So you're putting a lot at risk, but you can potentially have a huge reward. Now, the reward may be simply in time, right? That I control my time. I don't have a boss. Nobody gets to tell me what to do. The rewards can be that. They can be financial, whatever. But you're now in a different realm. You don't have a boss, though, and therefore there isn't that level of security that there might otherwise be, especially if you're working for a big company. And that's the good and the bad, because in times like this, it really comes down to, can you make money fast enough to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish? So let's break it down for somebody right now. So there are two drivers in your business as we go into a crisis like this. Driver number one is your expenses, and driver number two is the amount of revenue that you bring in. Now, most people in a moment like this, they contract. They come back to, yo, I have to cut my expenses as fast as possible. I'm going to be laying people off. I'm going to be reducing my costs. Maybe I'm getting out of my office. All of those things may be the right answer, okay? Right now, without knowing their business, all I can do is talk about the levers. So that's lever number one. Cut your expenses to the quick, get things down to as lean as humanly possible and to still run your business. Then number two is generate more revenue. Now, if all you do is contract, you're never going to survive this crisis. I promise you, you will not save your way through this crisis. That's going to be a part of your strategy, but it will not work if that's the sum total of your strategy. So now on the other side, going back to self-narrative, going back to you're going to see what you look for, you've got to start saying, where's the opportunity in this? So I don't know if it's actually true, but I've clung to this idea for decades now. Supposedly, there were more millionaires created in the Great Depression than any other time leading up to that moment. And I've always thought that's incredibly powerful, because that's people who go, oh, it's a time of massive disruption. Whenever there's disruption, you're going to have people that are consumed because they fall apart emotionally, they run out of steam, whatever the case. And then on the other hand, you're going to have people that they have no preconceived notions. So they come into it fresh. They're not trying to make something old work. They're just saying, what would work now in this space? So I was talking to somebody yesterday, and it was the yoga example I was giving you. And it was so important to her to have a physical studio for yoga. And I thought, you're going to get outplayed by the person who just cares about the yoga and they don't care the delivery mechanism. Now, all options are open to them. Maybe it is an in-person studio, but maybe it's not. And because they have flexibility there, they have more options to them to grow their revenue. And that becomes the critical piece. The people who figure out a way to frame their mind to look obsessively for the positive, to say, okay, hey, here are my lemons and I'm going to make some lemonade. Those will be the people that will generate new income where other people see only the possibility of failure.
So I think that's a really, you talked very succinctly there about both levers, and it comes back once again to the mindset. It comes back to the 7 steps that you put out there about eating well, about exercising, about having a narrative, rewriting your narrative if you have to. Every day I write a lot about this, about your narrative, making it one that makes you proud, makes you feel energized, makes you feel good about who you are and the choices you've made, because we can all tell ourselves a narrative that sucks, where we're a victim, where it's negative, or we can change the narrative into one that's positive. But I think, as Tom was saying there, and he writes down, and follow him if you don't already, but he writes down specific things that each of us can do. And I just want to, because I don't want to keep you too long, Tom, but you talk about this mindset university, or you have Impact Theory University, but you have this mindset course that you said you're now opening up to people for free. What they'll get if they go to that. Is that all about changing your mindset? What's that about?
Yeah, so mindset isn't as squishy as people may make you believe. What's up, Manoj?
That's Champ, it's, I'm holding the phone, so we're getting, come here, Champ. Okay. Champ.
I love dogs, so I'm all for it.
This is a camel Champ. Okay.
So with that, the mindset stuff is pretty concrete. Like, the brain works in a certain way. As I, often tell people, you're having a biological experience. Like, even as spiritual beings, we are still dealing with the world through a body, and the body has predictable reactions to things. And you can literally change the wiring of your brain by changing what you think about, by changing the things you repeat. I think repetition is probably one of the most utilized tools. People use it by accident, so they repeat negative things. Those negative things become hardwired. So in the mindset class, I'm walking people through the basic levers that you have that you can pull to change the way that you think, all with the aim of changing your behaviors. So your behaviors are a reflection of your beliefs, your value system, your identity, a few other pieces. And I walk people through not only what those pieces are, but I walk them through the very tangible steps you have to take to actually make those changes, get those changes to stick, so that the behaviors that come out of that will be what you want. And ultimately, it's the behaviors that will propel you forward.
Why are you doing
that? Yeah, this is the question that defines my life. So I've worked in the inner cities a lot, and this started for me back in '94. I was really trying to get into film school, and I didn't have the grades. I didn't have the SAT scores. I got a 990 on my SATs. I took it twice. That was my combined score, and they wanted a 1300. So I thought, whoa, my dreams are over before they've even begun. What do I do? And I took one of the people on the admissions committee out, and he said, oh, just get good grades. And, if I'm looking at your grades and they're good enough, I won't even look at your SATs. So I gave me 2 years to get good grades. And so when I got offered the extra credit assignment to go teach in the inner cities, I took it and taught a class. It was awesome, and had a chance to do it again the next semester. But this time, instead of a class, they gave me 1 student. And I got that student. I was supposed to have him for 8 weeks. And he was a nightmare, man. They, of course, take the most problematic child and they give him to you, and they try to get him out of the class for as long as possible. And for the first hour, he would just fight. He would ignore me, wouldn't look at me, push me away, would sometimes actually go get in fights with other kids. I was like, this is nuts. And then at the end of the hour, I'd say, look, man, I got to go. And he would start crying, and he would beg me, please stay, help me with my homework. So I'd stay. About week 5, I realized this kid is trolling me. He actually does this to get me to stay for 2 hours. It's actually pretty clever. But at week 6, you're supposed to warn them, hey, I'm only coming for 2 more weeks. So I tell him, and he goes nuclear. Now I'm 20-ish at this time. I've never seen a human act like this ever in my life. He went up and punched this kid that was about 3 times bigger than him, because he was adopted. He was drug and alcohol impacted. He was hyperactive, so they had him on some kind of medication. He was just tiny for his age. And I was just startled. And so he's freaking out. I'm trying to calm him down. And finally, I calm him down. I said, is this because I said I was only coming for 2 more weeks? And he said, yes. And I said, look, man, I will make you a deal. as long as I live in Los Angeles, I will help you with your homework if you'll do your homework immediately when I come. Is that a deal? And he said, yes. And so that turned into an 8.5-year relationship. And I was with him from the time he was 8 until he was 16. But I didn't know, and I literally want to punch myself in the mouth for this every day. He was being beaten at home, and I had no idea. And when he finally got taken out of his home, he made me the guardian to help him into the court system and to get him set up in foster care. And I have long been wounded by the fact that I was unable to save him from his zip code. So right now in America, your zip code is more predictive of your future success than your IQ. Now, it's really worrisome to me that your IQ plays that big of a role, but that I could at least sort of understand. But the fact that your zip code is more predictive is really, really troubling. And then flash forward 15 years later, I have 3,000 employees. About 1,000 of them grew up as hard as this kid. And Maria, I'm talking hard. I'm talking holding your stepfather while he bleeds to death from a gunshot wound to the head. One kid, his sister, was shot to death in the heart with an AK-47 in his front yard. Another kid laid under his car while his best friend tried to hold his intestines in from a gunshot at point blank range. I mean, just like, I can't even imagine it. It really put things in perspective for me real fast. And so I told them, I said, look, guys, I will make you a promise. Whatever you want to know about learning, about entrepreneurship, about getting better, controlling your life, skill set acquisition, all of it, I will teach you. I will come in early. I will stay late. I will do whatever it takes. Because I'm like, man, I'm building this empire. This is crazy. My whole life is changing. I want to make sure that I'm giving everything I can to my employees. So we created this thing called Quest University, and we're trying to teach them everything. And it just, when it hits and it impacts somebody, it is the most extraordinary thing ever. But to watch people be consumed by the neighborhood that they grew up in or the family that they were around, I mean, it comes down to self-narrative. It comes down to, you get a frame of reference. Like, I remember one of the kids saying, dude, in my neighborhood, people tell you the world doesn't want you to succeed. And so we just all believe that the world wants us to stay in the ghetto. The world wants us to stay poor. Mm-hmm. And it's like, no, they don't. They're not even thinking about you. They don't know who you are. Like, this is about what you think about you. And so the more I worked with people trying to give them skills, I realized what I actually have to give them is mindset. And the thing that brought, what's that?
I just want to say several people are going like, oh my God, this story. Who is this guy again? This is Tom Bilyeu. And I've been following you. I did not know this story about you. I follow you on Instagram, and I follow the 7 steps or the 6 steps, or I follow your love for your wife, which is inspiring to me. But I did not know this story, and it brings me to tears because it's really explains why you do what you do. And it explains the helper in you, the healer in you, the cultivator of hope in you, the architect of change in you, which I always have believed exists in all of us. If somebody sees something in us, and Tom is the bomb. Okay. Oh, here, your wife just put stuff, but all these other, I love Tom Bilyeu so much. I don't know who these people are, but I think it's always so important in a way. Our stories, your story makes all the following of you so much more interesting to me, actually, and obviously to people who are listening. And so I just am like blown away that you've done, I'm blown away that you've done well, but I'm blown away by the motivation that you have here, which is really to change people's lives who are born in different circumstances than you or I. And that's way beyond business.
No, I agree. And the punchline of life, and I'll just give this away, it's not money. I thought it would be money, if I'm honest. Like, when I was young, I was chasing money. That was it. I just wanted to get rich. I was tired of not being able to do what I wanted to do and have what I wanted to have. And so for almost a decade, I just chased money, just flat out. If you'd asked me, what's your mission? What's your purpose? I would have said money, getting rich. And then I was worth about $2 million, and I was more unhappy than I'd ever been in my entire life.
Wow.
And I went in and I gave my partners their equity back. And I said, I can't do this anymore. I need to feel alive. I need to go do something that I love. And I'm not going to cross the finish line, so I shouldn't get anything. And was literally about to move to Greece. My wife is Greek. And we were going to move to Greece and live in some tiny little town. And I was going to write and do things that made me feel alive. And then my partners convinced me. They said, well, we want to keep working together. So what would have to be true for us to keep working together? And laid out, I said, look, I need to do what I'm passionate about. I need to do what I love. I need to feel like I'm serving people and building a community. I need to be completely authentic. I don't want to be a slick marketer. I want to be who I really am. And we didn't know if that would make a good business or not, but they felt the same. And so against everybody's advice, we started a little company called Quest Nutrition because I wanted to save my mom and my sister. They were morbidly obese. And I thought if we can make food that they can choose based on taste and it happens to be good for them, then we might have something. And we did it all around community. We put value ahead of making money. And that was like, I remember that was like a big deal. Everybody thought we were nuts because this is back in like 2008 when we first started talking about this. Mm-hmm. And this was not a time where people are talking about, you know, put value ahead of money and stop steering by profitability. So it was this radical shift. And then, of course, it ends up being by far the most successful company that we'd ever done. And it was valued at over $1 billion. And I mean, it was just insane. And it changed my life financially forever. But it showed me that the punchline of life isn't success. It's not fame. It's not money. It is entirely fulfillment. And I'll say that another way. The only thing that matters, I promise, is how you feel about yourself when you're by yourself.
Okay, pause. In journalism, they teach us this, right? Pause a second, because you gave a punchline, and let's repeat it so people can either write it down or let it land. The only way you feel about yourself is when you are by yourself.
Yeah. So
a lot of people are by themselves right now, and maybe for the first time or something, feeling about how they feel about themselves.
Yes. And the good news is now we shift into what is just fundamentally true about the human animal. So one day I will write a book called The Physics of Being Human. And part of that book is going to be, there's just certain things that are true. They are hardwired into the human animal. Everybody has a desire to get better. Everybody has a desire to help other people. It's just, they're hardwired. So if you spend this time working on a skill that allows you to serve not only yourself, but other people, you will feel so good about that. And that's it. Like that feeling survives. Like you can be fulfilled in the middle of anguish. In fact, it's often doing hard things that leads to fulfillment, right? So great story.
Always.
Yeah, I wish it weren't so, right? And I think everybody wishes that one were different. But it's just the physics of being human, man. So, that's what I want for people. I want people to understand, trust me, all the money in the world. Like the question that I ask people is, how many billionaires have to commit suicide before you realize money does not solve the problem? And the problem is very much, how do you feel about yourself when you're by yourself? That's it. When there's no distractions, when there's nobody to prop you up or tear you down, how do you feel? Are you proud of what you're doing? You talked about this, right? Telling yourself a narrative that makes you proud. Like, who are you? What are you doing? And then tell that narrative and then live into it.
Amen. That is there. People are repeating on here. How do you feel about yourself when you're by yourself? And for many people, this is that moment. Tom said a lot of things here, but there's a lot to take away from here. Please follow him. Please go to his mindset course. He's making it free and available for the next 24 or 48 hours. I don't remember what it was, but he, really, I think, inspired us all to be learners, to see ourselves that way, to write our narratives. We're by ourselves, so write a narrative that makes you feel good about yourself. And fulfillment comes from hard work. And it comes from moments like this where you have to dig in, get creative, be a learner, say, I don't know this yet, but that I can learn it. And so, Tom, I want to thank you so much. I want to thank you first for sharing your story. I've talked to a lot of people about you. Nobody told me your story, which is kind of interesting since I'm all about story. So I love that I now know your story. I'll look at you differently. I think it's a beautiful story, and it's an inspiring one, and it fits our theme of helpers and healers and cultivators of hope. So thank you so much for joining us today. God bless you,
Absolutely.
and keep up
Thank
the
you.
good work. Keep up your
Thank you.
cultivating of hope.
Thank you so much for having me on. And if there's anybody in the feed that is struggling financially right now, Impact Theory University, which is our full catalog of everything we've ever taught, we also offer full scholarships for that for people that have financial needs. So, and that's an always and forever. That's from the day we launched until the day we stop. People that can't afford it will always get it for free. I mean, this is me trying to speak to the kids that need it most, right? So, yeah. If you need it, it is there. But for everybody, the Mindset 101 is free right now today. You can get access to it immediately. But just shoot us an email to Impact Theory University, and you can apply for a scholarship, and we'll get it turned around real fast for anybody that needs it.
Bravo. God bless you, Tom. Thank you so much.
Thank
Keep
you.
up the good work.
Thank you.
Let's
You
stay
too.
connected.
Definitely.
Okay.
For sure.
Thank you.
All right. Take care.
Bye.